Ah, God, I remember this episode. It had drama.
You know, when you were my girlfriend, you would have been 5 minutes late.
Well, I'm not your girlfriend anymore.
Fine. That's the way you want it. I got a better idea. Let's not be friends anymore either.
Our Boy Meets World version of drama.
When the spawn meets world, spawn meets world. When the spawn meets world.
What up, bro?
What up, bro?
And welcome to Bruh Meets World.
What is Bro Meets World?
Your Boy Meets World fan cast, episode 60.
Yo.
I'm Ceej.
And I'm your boy, Tony Coitus.
And we're back.
Yes.
Yep, really much.
We're back.
We're back. We're here for another week. Do you have anything that you want to start off with, or?
Well, I'll say that we're recording this during the period of time where Boy Meets World is not available on Hulu.
The in-betwixt.
The in-betwixt. Someone on our Facebook page was kind enough to remind us that we can review these episodes on YouTube. So I actually did hop on the YouTube to rewatch the episode before talking about it, just so I have it fresh in my mind. But yeah, this episode is interesting. I feel like there's a lot of interesting, like, exes being friends, things that's happening. There's a lot of interesting things happening with Eric and learning what education means to him. There's also people come back from the dead in this episode. So there's just a lot going on.
People come back from the dead.
Morgan?
We're going to get into that. But let's get into our Tell Me About It.
Tell me about it.
This is Season 3, Episode 14, A Kiss is More Than a Kiss. At Sean's urging, Corey re-enters the dating world, but he cannot bring himself to kiss his date, Melissa, because he's still in love with Topanga. But she's too busy locking lips with another guy.
Mr. West.
That would be, do we want to just go into the roll call?
Yeah, please, because that's what I'm here to talk about.
And talk about Shane West.
Teenage heartthrob Shane West.
To be fair, Shane did have that, like, look. You know, just like the blonde 90s kid
Well,
look.
it's interesting because I obviously probably, like most people, know him best from Walk to Remember. Like, that was my first introduction
Oh my
of him.
God.
So, like, seeing him with, like, longer hair was interesting. I was like, oh, yeah, that's him. But this is, like, the grungy 90s version of him. So...
Absolutely. And then we have in our other roll call, we have Sadie Kratzig as Felicia. I don't really know.
Bye,
Sorry.
Felicia.
And Andy McAfee, who is Marissa.
Her last name's McAfee?
McAfee.
Okay.
Yeah. McAfee? I don't know. I'm going with that.
Okay, sure.
Anyway, that is our Marissa, who I called Blossom this entire time.
Yeah.
She had the Blossom hat.
Sure.
And then our roll call, who I know you're looking forward to.
Oh, man. So that
which is the intro of Lindsay Ridgway, a.k.a. Morgan number 2.
I want to talk about this for just a second because
Let's do it.
I feel like in 90s sitcoms, we saw our good share of central characters being
Swapped out.
eliminated or swapped out, right?
What was going on? Maybe, I don't know what it is, but we did that a lot where we were just like, switch it, no one will notice. And
Yeah.
it's not that no one noticed, but it was just like, it'll be fine.
And I just want to commend Boy Meets World because I actually think they did the better job with it. Because, you know, like, for example, with Fresh Prince, like, one season we had one Aunt Viv, next season, different Aunt Viv.
But they acknowledge
They
it.
acknowledge it in, like, a meta breaking the fourth wall, like, moment in, like, the opening sequence, but then it's never discussed again. Morgan, by, like, basically eliminating her for half the season, it allows the audience to forget her and understand her as Corey's sister instead of the way the previous actress portrayed her. Like, they're not comparing the two actresses
Because it's been so long.
It's been so long that there's not really a fresh memory to compare it to, which I think is actually truly, like, the best way you could have gone about this.
All right, I can see that. I'm just thinking about, like, the Beckys on Roseanne.
Yes.
Which Sarah Chalk was one of, for those who know I love Scrubs. And then also, what's like another...
Well, we saw Judy Winslow just up and disappear.
Julie Winslow died, and they had to, like, I don't know what happened in the show's canon, but, like, we don't have her as a kid. I think she joined a cult. She became a Scientologist. That's what happened.
Possibly.
They were like, we have no other daughter.
Or maybe she just ended up being gay and they disowned her because they were a black family in the 90s.
That is very true in Chicago.
Yeah,
So.
there you go.
All right. But yeah, I thought it was a fun little bit. One that went on a little too long. But I do like this actress's portrayal of Morgan.
I think so.
And she's a little bit... Because I thought about it, I was like, oh, she's got more of the one-liners. And she's like really zinging. But early Morgan did the exact same thing.
Totally.
She just did it in a different way.
She did. And I do think that this Morgan is a little bit more sitcom than the other one. Like, I think the other one was too young to be aware that she was on television, whereas I feel like this Morgan is very aware that she's on TV.
She's very aware that she's a replacement Morgan.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
But I think she still, like, plays into it nicely. And I think the little bits of her that we see throughout the episode normalize her presence and make us understand. But the one thing I just want to talk about for a second is... Morgan, where have you been for almost a year? I've just been in my room for a long time.
The longest time out.
It's the longest time out, and I think it's explained because she said, like, a bad word or something?
I have no idea. I don't remember that at all, and I won't pretend to.
But just the idea that she's been, like, living in a tower like a hunchback, Amy and Alan need to go to prison. Am I right? Has she been going to school?
She's clearly been well fed. We haven't seen her as the TV audience, but she's around. I noticed they never took her photo off of the mantle, but what's always interesting to me is old Morgan's photo is still there. So we're in this, like, weird Twilight dimension.
Really?
Look over the fireplace. We still have old Morgan over the fireplace.
I like the idea that they are trying to have us believe that this is the same Morgan who is simply aged.
Yes.
Very interesting.
What I'm hearing is, even according to TV execs, all white people look the same.
I've been saying that for years.
No, yeah, in all honesty, I'm just trying to think of, like, a modern take on that is to just have them, like a new video game just came out. Or, like, you know, like, it's like, oh, hey, where have you been, Morgan? It's like, oh, I've been playing the latest version of, I don't know, Assassin's Creed or something, you know? Like, I just feel like that would be, like, the modern version.
Kind of thing. I don't know why didn't it just say, like, she was at, like...
Summer camp?
I know it's, like, the middle of the year, but yeah, something like that. But honestly, it doesn't really matter.
It doesn't, but I'm just saying, like, in the whole TV trope idea
Yeah.
of this character's been gone, I feel like a very modern way of doing that would just give them, like, an obsession that we all do. Or,
Sure.
you know, it's like, I've been binging the last few seasons of my favorite show, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
That was my only thing. Okay, do you want to talk about the episode?
What about she got a boyfriend?
Who?
So, Morgan, like, she had, like, a little boyfriend, and so she just kind of, you know...
This was back in the 90s where we were definitely not giving little kids... Well, actually, I was going to say we weren't giving little kids boyfriends, but Little Richie had Naya Rivera.
Totally.
So, I guess you're right. It would have been... We could have had some Taj Mowry crossover.
Ooh! He's a smart guy.
Good for you. I'm very proud. Okay, talk about the episode.
Okay, so...
Let's do our two storylines, which is the A storyline.
Yeah.
Is, of course, Corey and Topanga in this dating situation. And then the B storyline would be Eric and his college admissions.
Yeah.
So I would love to start with B because I feel like that just takes up less time.
I definitely want to talk about Eric because Eric in this episode, he is, Feeney finds him reading a rejection letter.
He got 30 to 40 rejection letters.
Which, by the way, like, when he said that, like, there wasn't... Dude, has this dude never heard of community college? Like, what is the problem?
So, it's really funny because I didn't think about that, but you're right. So many times, even when we're watching, like in other shows, community college is never really shown as an option, except in the show Community.
Yeah.
But, outside, I mean, and even that's played for like a joke and laughs. Very rarely do you see someone say, hey, I'm going to go to a local community college, work my way up, and then try to get into an Ivy League.
People treat, like, community colleges like it's like
clown college.
Yeah, well, that or just like the minor leagues.
Yeah.
Something like, you know, well, you'll be lucky to make it into the majors after if you get into there. But it's like, dude, this is community college. At least as far as I know, I don't know if it changed. community college was a direct path to a state school. You were almost guaranteed to get into a state school if you went to a state community college.
And you saved money. I wish I had done it sooner.
It was, I wonder if that's a millennial thing, though. That, like, as
They
the
created
price, the price increases happened, like, it's made community colleges more of a option.
I talk about this all the time. My boyfriend, who went to college around the time Eric would have gone to college, one semester of my education was his 4-year college education.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But yeah, I thought that was really interesting that he didn't even think of, like, even, like, there's no way that, like, a non-competitive school would have just let him in based on simply applying, but whatever. I assume he's applying to Harvard and Yale and all these places that he only knows by name.
40 school rejections. That he's applying, like, what I imagine is he's applying to literally everything that's, like, within a reasonable distance.
I refuse to believe that he wouldn't get a simple yes or even a waiting list, regardless of his grades.
I mean, yeah. What was the name of the school that he...
Boris.
Yeah.
Boris College.
Yeah. So I will say that there's a few things. One, it's the fact that I love Feeney's whole... Feeney says something along the lines of... hold on. No one likes rejection. Keep applying and keep trying. You and the right college will eventually find each other. Which I think it's Feeney's mature, like, educator way of saying, yeah, you didn't really do the work that you need to do, but there's education for everyone. And if you really keep trying and you keep putting yourself out there, you'll find something.
I think this episode is kind of low-key, like, majorly important to Eric's arc.
Absolutely.
Because not only is this, like, you know, we're really seeing what college means to him, there's this storyline is a typical Eric get-rich scheme thing that old Eric would have fallen for.
Absolutely.
Wait, all I have to do is fill out this piece of paper and I have a degree? That seems like something old Eric would really be down for, taking the easy way. And it was almost like this time he was like, no, I don't want to do that. And I want to work harder. And there's a girl that he's sitting with in the cafeteria who was like, oh, maybe I should try to get in this college. We could party together. And he's like, I'm not going to be doing too much partying, but we can study together, which is huge for Eric.
Yeah. I just thought it was like, I remember the three teachers, of course, being at the table when he's talking about Boris, and everyone's just like, Boris University? Like, are we serious? Are we buying this? And it kind of made me feel sad, because I think everyone just sees it for the situation that it is, which is he's feeling left out. And they're all his teachers. They know his grades. And so they're like, even on the off chance that he got into this doesn't sound like a respectable university.
Well, it seems as though Eric figures out pretty quickly that
Eric was onto it.
But the reason why he tells Feeney that he kind of just went along with it, he's like, you know, all of my friends, everyone else is so excited about where they're going next year, and I don't have that. And I gotta be honest, it made me wonder, like, why does Eric want to go to college?
Everyone else is.
Because everyone else is. There's no, like, I want to go because I want to study this. Like, we do find that later in the season, like, where he kind of gravitates towards meteorology. But prior to this, there's nothing like, oh, I'm really excited to become this. He's just like, no, I want to do what all my friends are doing.
Absolutely. And I will say, we've had this conversation before, that's common of a lot of people. A lot of people were just told they were going to college, and you go to college and some people even get in and they go their first semester, not because they want to study or they want a better life or they want a degree, but because that's what they were supposed to do. And
also, I will say that as an 18-year-old, when you don't really know what you want to do, like, going through the pattern of school seems a lot, like, safer than just, like, going out into the world.
Absolutely.
So, like, you're used to going to school. You've been going to school your entire life. So to stop going to school can sometimes be a more drastic change. So you just go to college because it's what you've always done.
It reminds me of, I don't know, you've seen it, but I don't know if how many of our listeners are familiar with the show Girlfriends. Oh, yeah, but, like, one of the main characters, Lynn, her reoccurring joke is she stays in school for so long because it's easier for her to go into the real world. So she just gets master's degree after master's degree. And yeah, that's a really big thing. For me, it made me think of those schools where they put like they list who got into what, and it's like plastered over everything. Our school didn't do that, I don't think. But
I think we did have like a school spirit day where the seniors were supposed to like wear a school shirt or sweatshirt from the college they were going to.
I was doing dual enrollment at that time, and I was like actually on college campus when that happened. But no, I think like I just think of those. I always felt weird about that.
Yeah.
About like seniors where they're like, oh, this person got into this school, and it's just listed everywhere. And you're like, that has to make people feel very crappy. If you've decided, like, what if you just decided to take a gap year?
Yeah,
like, there's nothing wrong with that, but you also get left out of this celebratory thing.
Yeah, I don't remember there being this like public, like even conversation really about where people were going. Like I might ask a friend one-on-one, but it wasn't this like huge thing really.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. But I do like how at the end of this storyline, Eric gets his recommendation letter from Feeny.
And the recommendation letter is great.
Absolutely. Because it's really, I think it's true to Eric and Feeny's relationship.
What's he say? He says, enormous potential, someone I'd bet on.
Yes.
Which I just thought was just perfect for where we are with Eric and Feeny's relationship and what we know of Eric, because I 100% agree. He has incredible potential. Does he ever reach it? That's something to debate.
I mean, to be fair, in Girl Meets World, he's a politician. So, I mean, take for that what you will.
There you go. There you are. But yeah, so I really do think that this was really important because I now see that, like, school means more to him than partying. I now see that, like, he doesn't want to just get into any school. He wants to get into a good school, and he wants to work for it. And so all of those things, I think, help shape the Eric that we're going to see going forward.
Yeah. Okay. A story.
Oh, just real quick, I just want to say Eric says a really funny joke where he's like, Mr. Feeny, I'm no brain surgeon. Well, according to Boris, I am.
Yeah, because he said, I figured it out when they sent me my diploma.
Yeah. In the mail.
And you're like, okay, yeah. And that's also, this is a complete tangent, but I do have a problem with how we do school applications in general. It costs a lot of money to apply to school. And I don't know in the 90s, but I'm imagining all the money he spent applying to all these colleges.
Dude, it's like $50 an application, right?
That's what I'm saying. Like, all of that, plus you still have to write individual essays and stuff like that. You're not like,
because every school has a different criteria for what you need to submit to apply.
And this is what I'm saying. It's like, that to me, it's really frustrating to know that we put this much weight on children, basically, to have to apply to so many things and spend so much money, when we know for a fact, like, it's not for everybody.
Dude, they're force feeding us that blue pill, so that's your indoctrination into the system, bro.
I was thinking, like, in all actuality, it's just like applying for a job where you have to do it every day, and you're like,
preparing
just so many. But at least with job applications, for the most part, you don't have to spend any money to do it.
No.
Whereas with college applications, it totally it's very costly.
Yeah, you have to like get a suit, get some clean urine, and you're good to go.
I love how you have to include clean urine in there. Okay, a storyline. Corey, Topanga, Nick, this.
So, Corey and Topanga, we find them at the beginning of the episode discussing how they're excited to do the school prom fashion show together.
Which
yeah. I want to pause and just talk about prom fashion shows because I believe you, both of us were in the prom fashion show.
Here's the thing. I have a terrible memory of these things, but it sounds likely.
I was in it both junior and senior year, and I believe you were in it at least senior year.
Absolutely. Here's the thing. Does it sound like something I would have done? Yes. Is it something that I remember? Not at all.
Oh, I remember it. I remember Travis Pate playing Lifehouse as I walked out in my suit with my high school girlfriend. Oh my god, dude. It was, who coincidentally, named Marissa.
Yes, that's right.
Small world. But no, I remember the prom fashion show. It's interesting because in this show, the prom fashion show is for parents to pick out clothes for their kids.
Yes.
Which, for us, it was us for our peers, and everyone got catalogs to take home, and it was a thing from kids for kids. And so it was very weird to see the parents, like, thinking, oh, I want to buy this.
Well, I did, to me, I saw that, A, because they didn't want to cast that many children.
Yep.
And then B, I was like, all right, this kind of makes sense to me. I've seen it done on TV a lot, where it's like, oh, we're going to have a fashion show and people are just going to bid and all this other stuff.
Sure.
Where I was like, this seems like a very weird way to get clothes. But again, you and I live in a fast fashion culture, and like, what is it? Men's Warehouse just has like a market on all these things.
Sure,
it's like, this is where you're going. This is where you're getting it. Don't even really worry about that much. So I don't know. I was like, I'm willing to suspend disbelief. Although it did bring me to my Turned On by Turner moment, which is where
Turned On by Turner.
ooh, and that's when they're offering to buy his clothes.
You know what? Real quickly, I do want to talk about Turner for a second, because there's one thing that, like, don't get me wrong, I thought he was very funny. I loved the whole bit. But to me, I couldn't help but just be like, oh wow, it's so crazy how Jonathan's character has changed so much since season 2, as far as being a central storyline. Because, you know, by the time Sean moves in, like at the end of season 2, I can't imagine the show without him.
Yeah.
And then when he pops up in this episode, I'm like, bro, like, what is your purpose exactly? Like, you're living with Sean, yet I see nothing of that relationship growing at all. Sean is out of that Turner's house most of the time.
Well, last week, remember, we had a little bit development, and we got to meet some of his old flames and his old lifestyle. So
I feel like he's not contributing to the Boy Meets World show. Like, everything this season has been like Boy Meets World and then some side tangents of like Jonathan and Eli doing 20-something
absolutely
shit.
What would be now a web series.
Yeah, so it does feel very like I can see how the show is losing their ideas of what to do with him.
Yeah, I can see that. And I think it's just because we start focusing on the kids in such a different way. Like, now that we have dating really in the mix, they are just so much meat on that bone.
Well, I also think too that the show is changing in that the kids aren't talking with the teachers as much as they're just figuring things out for themselves.
Yes.
So in the past episode where Corey and Topanga may have had this dispute, he would have gone to Alan, they would have had this conversation, and he would have tried it and it would have been fine.
Yeah.
This, he's like, no, I'm going to talk to Topanga about this. And like, they have this kind of really intense conversation at the end of the episode that we may have not had in season 2. So I just think that the purpose of the adults is shifting as the kids are figuring more out on their own.
No, I mean, like, again, I'm thinking about last week's episode where pretty much, yeah, Jonathan was doing his own thing, and it was Sean's, like, eavesdropping that helped him come to his conclusion. It's not like he actually sat down with Jonathan and explained what the situation. He was just like, okay, I can see how what you went through could apply in my own life, and then he just went off and did his own thing.
Yeah,
Okay.
definitely.
But yeah, no, I like this idea of what to do after a breakup. Again, this is the Boy Meets World territory where I'm like, yes, we are hitting on adult issues that are relevant today that are amazing that we're talking about in high school.
And this is real complexities of high school too, because unlike us in our 30s where we're like, oh yeah, I could probably be friends with an ex if it ended okay, if we had a good relationship or whatever, if it didn't interfere with any current relationships, like, there could be a place for that.
But even that takes a level of maturity that not everyone has.
Exactly. 100%. But to even think about that at 15,
yeah,
like, where you're just like, of course Corey's jealous. How is Topanga not jealous? Like, how are they able to, how is Corey able to so quickly just be like, yeah, we can do this together, we can hang out. Oh, he still has feelings for her. Oh, yeah. This is awkward.
And again, as it's Boy Meets World, of course it took it from the point of how Corey would really be reacting to this. And
yes,
we don't really see any downtime where Topanga's struggling with it. What we see is we pick up right when Corey's being faced with, hey, this is your new reality now. And I just thought it was great because unlike Gossip Girl or some of these other teen shows where it's a thing, but it's not really, we kind of move past it, or it's really dramatic. This dealt with it in a very real life way. A very, hey, not only are you jealous and upset, but like you don't have some master scheme to take her down, and like we all, it's like, it's not this whole thing where you are spending thousands of dollars and somehow you're friend's uncle is involved. You know, it's just like,
Sure.
no, all that is happening here is that you are using and weaponizing your relationship with your ex as a way to get her to do what you want her to do. And she very rightfully is like, that's not fair.
Well, you know what? As a kid, I couldn't quite understand Topanga being able to move on so quickly. But as an adult, I was kind of like, girl, you do you. You're single.
Yeah.
You're out there living your best life. Like, you're doing what you told Corey, hey, we are breaking up to see other people. Like,
Absolutely.
that's the reason we're breaking up. And so she took it more seriously, and she kind of opened herself up, as I would expect from someone like Topanga, who just has a more open understanding of kind of this hippie worldview of just like, you know, I can...
She has emotional maturity.
Emotional maturity, yes.
And it's the type of emotional maturity that for her character right now makes sense. It's the type of emotional maturity where she does what the storyline would call a mistake or weird, or, you know, it's like she's just not this angelic being who's waiting around for Corey,
Yeah.
which, like, again, most other TV shows would do. Topanga's living her life in the way that she knows how, and she's holding Corey to a certain expectation that's not unreasonable.
One of the things I really liked is that when Corey confronts Topanga about having seen her make out with Shane West,
Yeah.
she doesn't apologize for kissing him. She's like, I'm sorry you had to see that.
People are staring at us.
Well, let him stare at us. That didn't seem to bother you last night at Chubby's.
You were there?
Yeah. I mean, how do you think that made me feel?
Corey, I'm sorry you saw that. But we both knew we were going to see other people.
I know, but you're not supposed to kiss anybody else.
Corey, I wish I knew what to say.
Dude, Topanga is a pro at this.
Absolutely. That's what I'm saying. Like, I kept watching it, and what happened? I think there is a scene, or I just remember in my notes, there is something where he's like, if she keeps kissing other guys, then it's over. And it's like, it is over.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, that's that thing where Corey's like, no, if she, like, how can she do this to me as if in Corey's mind, they're still together. And Topanga has to be like, we are not. You need to accept that reality. Nick is who I'm dating. Get used to it.
It's also, I think, pretty believable for Corey to feel all this. I would actually think it would be strange for him to be excited to go out and date, considering like that he and Topanga were like these star-crossed whatever. Like they just, I don't know. For him to move on would be odd. I think he needed this time to kind of like mourn and be told to like, hey, you need to grow up, for him to kind of snap out of it.
Absolutely. Well, again, I love that there's a line in it where, very truthfully to just how men mature in general, but Corey's like, I'm supposed to see other people, you're supposed to wait until I die. And like that right there is so real on how most people feel when there's a breakup, and it's amicable, and people are like, hey, we're gonna see other people and we're gonna do other things. I've mentioned this a few times, but one of my favorite books on polygamy or open relationships or all these stuff is called The Ethical Slut, and it really did, for the very first time, illustrate to me how many people are like, oh, I think we should be in this type of relationship, and what they really mean is, I think I should be in this type of relationship and you should come along and allow me to do these things. Yeah. But when it's the other person has equal time and equal right to do all the things that you want to do, all of a sudden it's like you've lost something. And you're like, wait, no, that's not how this is supposed to work. Sure. And it was just, again, to me, very, very enlightening.
One thing that I thought was super interesting, to your point of how men and women kind of respond differently to these types of things, Topanga has this really kind of big idea, and I have it in my notes that I wanted to talk about. She says, sorry, just one second. Cut all this.
Yeah.
Topanga brings up an important point when she tells Corey that, you know, Corey confronts her like, oh, I saw you kissing Nick, and it took you forever to kiss me the way that you kissed him. And she's like, well, I never liked him the way I liked you.
Yes.
And to me, as soon as she said that, like, it really kind of, I was like, whoa, this is a big, like, misunderstanding between men and women. Because I think men have a very difficult time with the understanding that I liked him less, so I did more with him quicker because it didn't mean anything to me. Whereas from a guy's perspective, it's like, oh, you were physical with that person, you must like them more than you liked me because you were physical with them quicker.
Absolutely. And again, as you said, it's just kind of like an understanding of how we're trained and what we consider moving on. Because if you even want to take that measurement, Sean tells Corey it's not a date until you've kissed her. You know what I mean?
It's the reason we got out of the trees, man.
A date is not a date until you kiss. And I think that that's really interesting because that shows where the male mindset is. It's like, oh, it's not even... Again, I think this is kind of like the whole blurry line of men cheating. It's like, oh, I didn't even kiss her. Like, what are you talking about? I went out with her, but like nothing happened, and therefore this wasn't really cheating.
I think it just kind of comes down to the understanding that for women, at least for the most part, in my personal experience, bullshit, that like sex is our physical, touch, whatever. It's all things that will hopefully lead to love and like deep commitment. Whereas for guys, love and commitment, at least, generally at this age, very young and immature, will hopefully lead to sex and physical touch.
Absolutely.
So just that separation between the two is really clear in that one
even
scene.
If you think about Marissa, she even is like, she goes out with Corey a few times and she's disappointed that she didn't get a kiss. And, like, she's putting a lot of weight on it and she agrees to go out with him again. But I feel like as a form to redo, it's like, oh, maybe like I'll give you another chance to get this kiss.
No, but I disagree with that because she actually goes up to him and she's like, most guys would have kissed me and you didn't. And I really like that.
Yeah, but I think that even with that, it was, again, not kissing meant something. You know what I mean?
Exactly. To her, she's thinking, oh, he didn't kiss me because he really likes me. Not like these other guys who just want to kiss me and move on.
Exactly. And that's my point. And it's just this way. And it's funny because, again, from the male perspective, we know that he didn't kiss her because he chickened out. It had nothing to do with any real connection that they had. It's so much so that he was willing to meet her parents, which again kind of shows that for him, he was just meeting new people.
No, but from her perspective, meeting my parents means you really, really, really like me.
Exactly. They're different milestones. And what Corey was doing, which again is very true to a lot of men, what Corey was doing to delay, she took as, oh, you're doing all the steps that would really show me that you care. And only until the end, once that physical connection actually happens, they're like, oh yeah, there's nothing here. To me, it's not necessarily time wasted, but it is this whole thing of like, yeah, you guys could have gotten that over with had you either been straightforward or not led her on by doing the things that if you were to really
I don't know, like I guess you could interpret it that way, but I think there's also a lot of signs that Corey was not trying to lead her on. The first date, weren't even in the same theater. Second date, not even in the same row. Like he is keeping a distance that could be easily misinterpreted.
It could, but I think I agree with you that he's giving signs, but it's also one of those things to where if someone is constantly asking you out, you assume that they have to like you in some way.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, maybe he's shy. Maybe it's just taking him a lot. Like, your mind just justifies every decision that they're making because why else would he keep asking you out if he didn't want to be with you?
Yeah.
And we know it's because he's distracting himself. Again, as someone, like, we've both recently dated in the modern culture, and, like, that's what I think, like, a side effect of ghosting is. It's like you start seeing someone repeatedly and you've been hanging out and you're doing things, but you can't really get a read on them. And then one day they just disappear and you're like, wait, I mean, like, I guess they weren't really showing me that they were interested.
It makes you reinterpret, like, go back and think, like, oh, I was misreading something.
I was misreading some things, but also, you were doing certain things. You asked to meet my parents. Like, why would you do that if you didn't? And this is what I'm talking about. Dating is always crazy and weird.
One of the things I thought was really interesting is how Sean kind of coordinates this double date. He's like, Corey, you need to move on. You need to date other girls. And Corey's like, he's like, Sean's like, let's do a double date. And Corey's like, well, okay, yeah, that's fine. But what are you going to do then? Like, trying to, like, be jazz. Oh, yeah, I'm ready. Sean casually looks over to the first girls he sees and is like, hey, you guys want to go out with me and Corey tonight?
Yeah, I did know that.
I just thought that was such a TV way to ask someone out. Have you ever been asked out or asked someone out in a way that you literally just casually bumped into and you're like, hey, do you want to go out on a date tonight?
Yeah. I think I have.
Okay.
Never mind. I'm not gonna say that it's something I do often, but there was a time, especially like in college, where I was just like carefree, and I was that bold person who was just like, hey, you're really hot. I want to talk to you for a moment. Maybe like I was that person.
Okay.
It's not something that I did like all the time, and I definitely was not that person in high school. But in college, there was like, and I think that's what we're supposed to see. Remember, Sean is very comfortable in his ability to get dates. So I think for him, he was like, oh yeah, why? Of course, if I put the line out there, I'm going to catch something. You know what I mean?
You know what? And that kind of gets to my central issue with this episode, is that I feel like we keep getting conflicting messaging in which we have Sean and Corey's parents and pretty much everyone around Corey's life being like, hey, you need to date more. It's good for you to date more because the more people you know, that's how you figure out who you're going to like. Like, that's what Amy says. Like, you don't know who you like until you date around.
Yeah.
Which is very true and very important. However, the show itself is contradicting that message by not allowing Corey to truly open himself up to anyone else. He is dead set on Topanga, and it never shifts away from that to the point where the show's like, oh, this is soulmates. They're meant to be. And I have to be honest, I really think one of the negative things I took away from the show as a kid was this idea that you were supposed to meet one person and that was supposed to be it. And I didn't really date around as much because I always thought that this was the way it was supposed to be.
Yes.
Versus, no, that's kind of the opposite. You meet more people, you realize, wow, I don't like the way this person talks to me. I don't like the way this person treats me. I don't like the way this person behaves. I don't like the way this person treats service people. I don't like the way this people talk to their parents. Like, any of that shit that comes up. It takes time, and I just really regret, because the one time that Corey actually does open himself up to another girl, Lauren, that shit... the show doesn't even allow him to pursue that in any serious way.
No, it's an event, and it's a wrinkle in their love story.
Exactly. Versus just being like, no, like, we're young and I want to meet someone else. And
yeah, I think about it. It goes back to that whole, as you were saying, meant to be storyline that we really, really did in like the 90s, where I think of like Steve Urkel and Laura. Mm-hmm. And don't get me wrong, they at least dated other people, but it was always this thing where what would be seen as pestering or stalking was like endearing. And it's just like, oh no, they just really like you. And the same thing with here. I love that Topanga just shuts him down and she's like, I am not your girlfriend. You need, like, I am your friend, and I don't want to lose my friend. But if you keep behaving this way, I won't even have that, because you are not respecting me as a person, and I get that we had something real, but this is not, in a very meta way, this is not a TV show. You don't just get to own me, and I'm yours, and we wait around for each other, even though that's what we eventually do.
It kind of makes me realize, like, how much on 90s sitcoms there was this, like, person who was supposed to be, like, this playboy date person, but they ended up, like, settling very quickly. Like, I immediately think of John Stamos and Jailbird Becky, how, like, he was supposed to be, like, this heartthrob, but he ended up just being in a monogamous relationship for a majority of that show, and how they often have these characters that at one point find freedom in dating, realize at some point, wow, what I'm really missing is this. Yeah. And I feel like that's a pretty consistent message that I've heard from 90s television.
I don't think we get that a lot. And
I think Sex and the City changes that. I think that's the first thing.
I was going to say Sex and the City, and then also I'll say Friends. Friends ends with Joey. Like, don't get me wrong, most of the Friends do. But Joey, who was and always has been seen as this playboy, Joey ends the series single. You know, it's like they don't have Joey meet someone and then the next day he's in this long-term committed relationship and is about to have a kid. You know, which is what a lot of TV shows would do.
But, I mean, for 4 of the 6 to end up together, that's still...
No, I'm saying I agree with you, but I'm also just saying that we are starting to get certain characters. And I will also say that Joey's not seen as, like, happy with it. He wants something deeper. But yeah, it's very complicated. One thing that I liked and I just wanted to bring up is the line of the first date after your relationship is really tough. And I definitely globbed onto that because it's something that we really don't talk about, especially to boys. I think there's always the divorcee woman who talks about, and we see a lot of time in movies or television where it's like she's getting back out there and how hard that is for her and her body's not the same and does she have kids or yada yada yada. But we very rarely see a guy having problems getting back into the dating pool unless of course it's like he's having a complete breakdown and it's clear that he's
exaggerated.
Upset. Yeah, it's very exaggerated. So.
No, yeah, definitely. I think that there's I think that the way that Corey matures throughout this episode, I think is one of those things where he, at the beginning, like you said, has a very hard time moving on, and he progresses past that, but he doesn't really. And that's one thing I want to point out, is that he agrees to be friends with Topanga, but he still ends up crushing and phoning and still believing that he is meant to be with Topanga in these next few episodes. So it's one of those Boy Meets World things of you learned the lesson, but that lesson goes away after this episode.
Well, also, I think there is something, or there can be something to be said about respecting someone's choice, even if it's not what you want. You know what I mean? There are plenty of people, there are crushes that you have or whatever, where you're like, oh, this won't be what I want it to be. And you know what you need right now is a friend. And so I'm going to be a friend. That doesn't mean that I'm still not into you. It doesn't mean that I'm not into you. And it doesn't mean that if you were to change your mind, I wouldn't leap at the opportunity, but I will also be a friend and not make that the focal point.
Do you think Topanga has incredible emotional maturity, as we mentioned. Do you think her kissing Corey on the cheek or anything like that is really good? It's clearly not good for Corey, for her to be doing things like that.
Well, I did like how when she does it the first time, he's like, why are you doing that? And she goes, I've always done that. Why would I not? And for me, I was like, oh, you can't do things like this and then also ask him to accept the difference. That I will say is there's plenty of times where people are like, well, I always climb into bed with you. Why would I not do that? And you're like, because we're not dating anymore, and you're the one who wants to establish that and make sure that I get that.
Well, especially if you feel that the other person is still trying to get with you.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. It's there's just plenty of times where you're like, no, okay, you also have to.
You have to establish some boundaries to transition this relationship into a new relationship.
Absolutely. And again, to me, I think that just introducing all of these ideas in a very healthy format, or at such a young age, is really important, because I don't think we always see someone just accept that. I think I was thinking of the show Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and how Boyle does that with Rosa in the first season, how he's constantly pursuing her, and then eventually she's like, I only like you as a friend, and that's how it will be. And then he's like, you know what? I don't feel the same way, but I will accept and respect your wishes and let our relationship grow from there.
Sure.
Again, in that book that I was reading, Ethical Slut, it talks about how the end of a sexual relationship or a partner relationship doesn't mean that that relationship itself is no good. Sometimes people work better as friends, and sometimes that's a temporary thing. And sometimes you don't want to be around each other and you shouldn't be around each other at all.
Sure.
All of those are options, but sometimes you don't have to throw everything out just because you didn't work as a couple.
Sure.
Which is what I like that this episode does.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to say?
I don't think so. I think we touched on most of the stuff.
The only thing I want to end with is I'd never not be there for you.
Yes. There's clearly just a commitment that's going to be between these two, from the history that they have, the relationship that they've developed, each other's first kiss, first dates, first everything. So.
The only thing I have, I like this. The only problem that I have with it is, again, Corey gets the benefit of the doubt, because when he, and I don't mean that in a negative way from Topanga, I mean in the way the show sets it up. Because Turner's like, Corey's not the type of guy who'll just leave you hanging. You know what I mean? It's no one no one's acknowledging that Corey is behaving childishly. Yeah. And I feel like a better way to do that would be like, hey, I hope he comes, but if he doesn't, you deserve someone who respects your friendship. Or, you know, it's like something to where it's like it puts the owner, or it acknowledges Topanga's awkward position and gives her sympathy without automatically giving Corey credit, who, as this point in time, is not there.
Sure, definitely.
So that's my only real edit, but yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. What grade? Or sorry, do you have a bruh moment or anything like that?
You know what? I don't know that I have a bruh moment for this episode. Other than, oh, you know what? I do. Bruh. Amy and Alan need to be in prison for imprisoning their child for at least 6 months.
I told you, she was just upstairs in her upstairs in her room playing the latest Sonic the Hedgehog Game Boy game.
I'm sure that was the only thing she had to do, considering she was not allowed to leave for months on that.
She looked well fed, so that's where I'm going to put that. My bruh moment, I guess, it's kind of what I had hinted at earlier, but it's not like a bad bruh moment. It's just like the idea that we're at a school function and people are offering to buy Turner's clothes. I mean, like, send him a note privately, you know?
Sure, yeah.
So that's my whole thing. Topanga taught me the lesson of this episode.
I think the lesson is about transitioning relationships, about evolving from one kind of relationship to another. I don't have an exact quote to support that, but I feel like that's the general concept of the episode, is, you know, going from friendships to what happens afterwards. I mean, from relationship to friendship.
Yeah, if you really care for each other, you don't throw away the bond of friendship.
Exactly.
That was pretty much the lesson to me. Okay, grade. What are you giving this?
I think of this episode a B.
Yes, solid B.
Solid B.
I feel like we get a lot of growth from the characters. I feel like our time is used well.
I don't feel like the B storyline takes away from the A storyline in any way.
And actually, I was going to say this earlier, but I actually feel like
crossover.
It kind of hints at it with Feeney's line of "No one likes rejection."
Okay.
And I was like, oh, that's actually what this entire episode is really about.
Yeah.
It's really about everyone picking yourself back up and applying again and trying again and doing the thing that is hard to do when you've been rejected.
Yeah, or when you thought you had something you lost. Because that happened to both Corey and Eric in this.
Exactly. So that was my one thing. Okay, homework.
Oh yeah, okay. I have some good homework.
Okay,
I have 2 things that I want to throw out, both of which are Netflix originals. My first is the show Rhythm and Flow on Netflix. The reason why I'm recommending this show is because it's an American Idol voice type show, but it is about hip hop. And although that's, you know, really interesting, I enjoy to rap myself. I found a lot of things that I really dug about it. But I think the biggest difference between this and every other reality show I've seen is that they are all performing songs that they have written themselves.
Ooh.
They're rapping. They can't perform someone else's song. So, like, as you're going through each performance, you're, like, learning these people's stories. And you're learning, like, their creativity. And it's just so much more artistic than any other show I've seen. These are like, it's almost like a storyteller's thing, like where you're really like learning about each character through their songs that they write and everything like that. So I just think it's extremely well done, and I think that hip hop lends itself to this type of format because of that storytelling aspect.
No, I really like. I've been talking to you about this for the longest. I was like, why are there not more reality shows that center around minority interest?
Sure.
You know, it's like a lot of things are like America's Got Talent or you know, So You Think You Can Dance, or like, I mean, like all of those things kind of hit it on the fringe, but white people are at the front of these. And I feel like Rhythm and Flow specifically is like, no, we are trying to reach out to minority individuals and show the talents that you have that aren't always appreciated as art.
Definitely. And what I also like is that the show actually does things really interesting. So like on American Idol, you're like, welcome back to Beatles Week. And it's like, oh my God. So it's like every week then just singing a different genre.
Yeah.
This is like, hey, we're going to have like a freestyle battle. Then after that, we're going to pair you up with an actual R&B artist to do a collab. And then we're going to pair you up with a producer to do a song. And then you're going to shoot a music video. And like they do all the full arc of artistry.
I was gonna say, it sounds like it's not only entertaining, but it's educational. So it's like
100%.
These people leave with experience as opposed
More
to
so
just
than-
being used for their talent.
Absolutely. And so that's why I think, like, when the show ends, you're like, oh, wow, I can see any of these people really popping off versus The Voice, where it's really just about the judges bickering at each other.
Exactly.
So, and I just quickly, also, second bit of homework, Dolomite is my name, and fucking up, motherfuckers, is my game. Eddie Murphy is back, y'all, in an R-rated comedy where he belongs. I really thought the brother lost it because obviously he hasn't done anything in like 11 years, like anything really big. And he also just, anytime I've seen him in interviews, he just seems kind of quiet. He seems reserved. I thought maybe he lost his Eddie-ness. His bite. And it's I'm realizing he's 60 years old, one.
Yeah.
He's an old man. Like, he doesn't look it. He looks great. But as soon as that, like, you watch that movie, you're like, oh man, the kid is back. And I really thought that he gave an amazing performance. I thought the movie was shot really beautifully. I thought showing a black man in the 70s being an independent filmmaker where every door was shut in his face, he's like, I'm going to do it myself. That's the story of Dolomite. It's a story that anyone can relate to, and it's just done wonderfully. So,
I will say, watching it at the end, like, I wasn't in love with the movie, but I just, like, this is my whole little thing, and it's a little tangent, but and nonetheless, watching the movie, the moment we meet his female counterpoint or whatever, I was like, her story is way more interesting to me.
Yeah.
Tell me her story. Like, yeah, don't get me wrong, we can bring him into it, but, like, why are we not following her? She came, like, everything you told me about her, I am 10 times more interested in than this, what would be a failed male artist until he reached success, which is so common.
I don't know. I think the draw of the story, and I think the thing that people are getting from it is this idea that when no one else believes in you, you have to believe in you.
That is such a common male
know, but this
trope.
It's not a trope. This is a real life
I
story.
know, but, like, these are the movies that Hollywood allows to be made.
So you think that there should be some, like, the female equivalent to this?
The male, well, I'm just saying it's like the male underdog, which, again, I love the ending of this movie. And again, without giving anything away, it was definitely feel good. Like, at the end of this movie, it definitely showed respect.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, you know what? I may not have liked the ride, but I love the destination.
Sure.
Whereas the moment she was introduced, every scene she was in, I was like, yes, more. Where are you? What's your story? How did we get here? When she has her intimate scene with Eddie and that one-on-one conversation, I was like, yes, again, this is what I want. And it was like, I personally just feel whenever we get these stories, almost always we are introduced to a fringe female character who I'm like, their story is way more interesting in terms of storyline, but you are the ticket in, so I guess we have to.
I will say that if you want the same story, but you want the focus to be on the girls, Dreamgirls.
Yes.
Eddie Murphy is this already established man who discovers these women who
perfect
there you
one
go.
for one. I love that you said that. I'm adding that.
So
to our
you
homework.
can. So if you watch Dolomite and you have the same feeling that Ceej did, just watch Dreamgirls and you're fine.
You know what? I double feature. I'm here for it. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. And then on top of Dreamgirls, because I now recommend a double feature.
Make your way to the top.
I mean, he does great in that.
It's my
and he
favorite.
got his. Was that his first Oscar nomination?
I don't know, but that's easily his best acting.
He was so good in that.
Yeah.
And then I have a bit of a different homework, and I'm doing it very similar to what I did a few weeks ago, where I am asking you guys to watch this so I have someone to discuss it with. I saw The Lighthouse, which is, I will not lie to you, it is an indie art film. It is everything that you think of when you think of indie and art. It's in black and white. It's in a 1-to-1 ratio. It's so weird and absurd at times.
1-to-1.
Yeah, it is. It's like it's
a box.
Yeah, absolutely. The entire time. And when you learn the history behind it, or like the background of the movie and the production, it's even more interesting. But watching the movie is just such a weird trip. And I want someone else to watch it so I can talk to them about it. I will not recommend this. This is not Dolomite Is Your Name. This is not a Netflix show. This is definitely something that is weird, and you have to be into indie art films in order to even like stick with it because it's like 2 hours or something like that.
Did you ever see the Nicolas Cage movie where his like wife gets like murdered or taken away from him and he has to like revenge? It just came out like a few years ago and it was super artsy and independent.
No.
Okay, you can omit this, but I like. Yes.
Yeah.
It's that,
So,
like just that weird art. I need to talk to someone about
I
this.
will say this: Robert Pattinson does a way. You're like, oh, you're right. I never would have thought of you as anyone other than a teen star. And
so you're saying that Robert Pattinson isn't a bad actor. He was just playing the part that he was assigned in Twilight. And you could very easily see him as Batman.
I will say that this movie is what he needed to do in order for audience to take him seriously as Batman. I will say that. And then I will also say that Willem Dafoe is Willem Dafoe and always and forever just ludicrous craziness on screen. But because it's Willem Dafoe, you're like, yep, I'm here for every bit of this. So, yeah, those are my homework assignments. All right. Thank you guys for listening.
William Dafoe seems like the kind of guy who grins during sex.
Absolutely. And I'm not going to lie, I'm weirdly turned on.
Ooh.
I mean, like, here's the thing. Would I ever? Maybe. But, like, it's just, like, out of curiosity. I don't know. We're learning a lot about
Try
it.
Green Goblin. Why not?
Okay. Thank you guys for listening to Bro Meets World. Remember, you can find us now on all the places, Spotify, iTunes, Stitcher, Google Podcasts. Leave us a rating. We appreciate it. You can follow us on Twitter and Facebook at Bro Meets World or email us at bromeetsworld@gmail.com. You can find me on Twitter at Extra Ceej. That's XTRACEEJ. TC?
You can find me on Instagram at @braverme, @braver.me, You can find me on Instagram. Yeah, guys, you know what? We are getting closer and closer to Disney Plus. So the return of Boy Meets World will be coming to your streaming services. But as we mentioned, you can watch really terrible versions of these on YouTube if you guys want to continue to follow along with us.
Yeah, it's just like a slightly sped up version, which of course. But if you want to follow along, feel free to do so. Also, please remember to dream.
To try.
Dream girls, which is like,
oh.
and do good.
Be a dream girl, dream.
Later,
bros.
I was gonna say later, dream girls, but
okay.
I think maybe it was one too many. Either way, later, bros.
Later, bro.